All right, good morning. Welcome to Double B's Garage. Today we are actually going to be doing the suspension removal on the A4 Allroad. I got my trusty assistant here, Matt, my brother-in-law. Good morning, Matt. Okay. And we are going to get started on the car. So you're going to see a bunch of different videos today of us removing stuff. I'll try to place the camera in a bunch of different areas to maybe help kind of orientate where we are. I want this to be as informative as possible. So if somebody's watching this video and wants to do the same thing, they can maybe use it as reference and know what to do and when to do it. We may run into some issues today because this is our first time. We haven't looked up anything, so there's no knowledge or pre-knowledge of what we're supposed to do, but we have a general knowledge of suspension and we've done stuff before on cars, so hopefully it works out fairly well today. All right, guys, so as you've seen, we disconnected the upper A-arm to the control arm on the upper side. The lower side, we don't need to loosen up these, but we do need to remove the steering arm, which is holding the disc from falling forward. But before we do that, I want to take off the caliper and free this wire up here from its holder. Free the caliper off here. I'll bring the caliper over here and I'll hang it. At least, or just set it on the bottom control arm, just so at least it's not holding pressure on the brake hose, but it'll allow us to move this disc forward all the way. So I'm going to do that now. What we've seen in this video, or what we've seen so far with working on this car, is that in Porsches, it's like 13, 17, and 19 millimeter. And then obviously if you're working around the motor, a lot of 10s. But in this car, it's been 16 and 18s. And I don't know what the deal is, but 16 seems to be like something that's never used. So it's like I never have a good supply of them. The only 16 millimeter wrench, actually, like just standard spanner wrench, I snapped years ago. So I've been using these mountain wrenches, which I'll show you if I can find it. It's right here. These mountain wrenches are like game changer. They're called Steelman Pros, but what they are is they're a swiveling head, and they're ratcheting, and you can adjust the ratchet back and forth. So you can either have the wrench this way or this way, and then you can adjust it left or right, or loosen, tighten. On each wrench, like on this one, it's a 16 and an 18, and then you have 17 and 19s, and then it goes all the way down to 13. I think I paid about 120 bucks for them about 10 years ago. But they've been honestly just a great tool to have. On a Porsche 928, it's like crucial to have those wrenches for the top bell housing bolts behind the motor. I mean, it was like such a huge difference when I put those on. All right, so now we're going to remove. I don't want to remove this whole thing. I guess I could do that. Maybe that would be easier. All right, you know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to put these 13 bolts back, and I'm going to loosen up the big guys. Hey guys, if you're watching, I don't want to use the pickle fork on this yet. Sometimes pickle forks can be aggressive to these boots, and the last thing I want to do is have to replace this arm if the boot's worn out, which, I mean, it's not a huge deal. But so what I did is I sprayed a little penetrating oil on top of this nut. You can see it right there. And what I'm doing is letting the penetrating oil sit. Then I'm going to bang on the side of this, hopefully to break that seal between the shaft of that joint and then up into this housing here. And then once I do that, that'll drop out, and then I can swing this whole thing forward. Then we will go to the top and remove 4 bolts that hold the cradle in for the top here. That hold the cradle in up there. You can see that big, like, almost spider-looking cradle. It's aluminum. We got to take those bolts out, and then the whole assembly will come out together, including these arms. And then that is what you take out and replace the strut, because you can get to the bolt on top then, and then you put that back together, and then you put it back in as a whole assembly. So we will do that after I get this guy free right here. So hopefully I can do that. I'm going to grab a bigger hammer.
I got the sledge under the car.
Okay, we'll grab the sledge and then we'll see if that works. Stay tuned. All right, everybody. So, update. I got that lower tie rod joint out for the steering. I moved this. Here, I'll hold my light the other way here. I got this out of the way. I just flexed it down off of the sway bar, which we're going to be replacing the sway bar anyways. We're keeping these drop links. Here is the bottom of the strut, which I have freed off from around the lower control arm, or the inside of the lower control arm. And then the strut is basically loose. The caliper's loose. The knuckle's loose. And this is loose, which is going to come out as a whole, as mentioned earlier. Once I get that loose on top, I'll swing the caliper out of the way and we can lift it out. We are going to do the exact same thing to the opposite side. So I'll save you that. I will show you when we're taking this out, and then we will move on and do the rear. So more to come. All right, everybody. I wanted to give you an update. We are at the top of the car, or the top of the strut tower in the engine compartment. And as I mentioned earlier, there is like a spider-looking type contraption underneath this coming up from the bottom. And there's 4 bolts on top. If you notice, you can't get to the center nut of the strut. You only can get to these bolts. They are 16 millimeter bolts here. We had to take off this little plastic cowl, which was super easy to get to. And then there's one here, and then there's one down there. So all 4 of these are loose. This is the passenger side of the car. On the driver's side, can I see the light, Matt? On the driver's side, there is 1, 2, 3 underneath this little reservoir for the windshield washer fluid, which I removed the bracket just to get to it. And then the 4th one is down there. You can see it underneath the wiring harness, which actually the wiring harness has flexibility and moves over and is actually pretty easy to get to. So now we will loosen up all 8 of these bolts, 4 on each side. This was the nut for that little guy right here that went down there. So we will loosen up all 4 of these, and then we will raise the car enough to where we can get the strut out while still reaching over the fender well to get these done. So Kira, what do you think?
I think it's good.
You think it's good?
Yeah.
Do you know what we're doing?
Probably fixing the car.
We are fixing the car, but it's not broke. We're just going to put different suspension on it so that it's lower. Okay? That's what that is over there. See that right here?
Oh yeah, those.
Yep, these are suspension. These are struts with shocks and springs built in, and then these are springs and shocks separately that go in the back of the car. And that big blue thing right there is called a sway bar.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I didn't know sway bars were even. I don't know what they are.
They help the body roll of the car when you go around the corner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming out to help.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You want to say anything to them?
Just make sure you hit subscribe.
So you want them to hit subscribe?
If you liked it.
And then also click
Like.
Click like. So all right, everybody. We bolts are off the top. You can see I get my hand all in here now. A bunch of dirt and crud. They've lowered a ton, actually, from the nuts. There's only 1 bolt holding it in right now, which we're going to loosen from the top. And then we should be able to pull this whole assembly out. We'll probably have to, once we get the bolt out, we'll move the caliper around. Okay. You want to grab the caliper and hold that down here. Like that. Okay.
Far enough out of the way.
Yep, I think so. Get this line out of the way. Boom. There we go. So guys, we're removing this bolt right here from this arm. We did not have enough force even with the pry bar to get the spring out of there. So we're removing this bolt. We are also going to relax the bolt that goes to this upper control arm here, and then loosen the bottom bolt just to get things loose. And then we're going to use a leveraging tool that we're going to make ourselves and see if this helps us get the spring out. So have a gander. So this is what we're doing, people. We got a, if you can see when he pushes on it, we got 2 of the wheel bolts, and we did a strap here to give us leverage. No way. All right, so another day. We are out here today. What I did since the last video is I loosened up this subframe bolt. You can see a big gap here. I loosened this one up first all the way and then put it back in about 3 or 4 threads just to, you know, make sure it was grabbing the body. And then I did the same thing. There is one under here, right here. There's a little plastic panel that comes off. It's over here. It takes like 3 Torx 25 bolts or bit, and then a couple 10mm like square nuts that are plastic. And then the same thing on the other side. There's just, you know, less Torx and maybe more plastic, 10-inch little plastic nuts. But what I did was I put the strap back on here to give me some leverage, and then I'm using the crowbar to slowly get the spring out from underneath this perch. Bingo. All right, so got this guy off. So it locates it in the top. Got the spring off here. This guy is way bigger than the other ones. All right, so we're working on the ground here today. We removed the rear spring, and what I want to do is replace this spring with this spring. Obviously, this looks a lot shorter, and it is, but it also is going to have this perch on it, which sits below it on the bottom so that you can adjust the ride height. What needs to happen first is I need to put the lubricant on these threads. Putting the lubricant on these threads, make sure this will always spin and not gall. You just don't want this to be dry. It could bind up. It's aluminum, obviously, and you want to be careful. Also, it tells you in the chart right here what the rear adjustment is and what the front adjustment is. We're doing the rear right now. So like for the A4 Avant Quattro from 2009 to 2014, which is the B8 body style, which is what I have, between the bottom and the top of these parts on the piece, it says between 30 and 55 millimeters. I will look online to see what that range is in terms of a drop from the stock ride height, but right now I'm going to set it at 40. It's somewhere right in the middle. It won't be terribly low, but I will also be able to adjust it lower, and it's always easier to go lower than it is to go higher because obviously the pressure of the spring is pushing down on this right here, so it should spin a little more freely. There's also this little gasket that goes on top of this piece right here, and then the spring sits on top of that. So I'll reuse the factory rubber bushing on top, and then that's all I will need down here below. So I'm going to lube up these threads now with this material. You definitely want to have enough. And then what I do is run the threads all the way down. And then all the way back up to make sure that that lube is in every thread. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this back down to 40 millimeters, which I have on my calipers right here. A little higher. And that seems awful high. I think what I might do is go to 35 millimeters. Yeah, I'm gonna go to 35. On the fronts, we will measure on the new system once it's in the replacement right here. I gotta take this off. I got a special tool for that actually, but I gotta take this off and then I'll put that shock in there. If you can see this tool right here, it's a 3424 tool number, but what it does is you stick it in the thin way and then you rock it out so it stays, and you put it right in that gap, and that gap will open up and allow the shock to come out while this sits there, and then you put the new shock in and you just turn this back out and it clamps back down, and obviously you can tighten the bolt. So it makes it real simple. Avery from Over Engineered, the one that I talk about that we work with occasionally, he let me borrow this tool. It was very nice of him. He also brought over a spring compressor too. Knowing I could lower the bolts and get the spring out, I decided not to use the spring compressor because it's just a little bulky, and I had to remove the brake caliper. And on these cars with electronic rear emergency brake, if you take off the caliper, you have to be very careful and particular so that you don't do anything to the emergency brake, because then the e-brake is what allows it to pull out and reset so that you can actually get it back on the rotor. I don't have that tool. He does, but I figured I would just try to get it off the way the way you just saw, and then we'll go from there and then try to get this mounted. All right. Thanks very much. All right, next order of business. We put in the spring. You can kind of see it through there. And then the spring perch on the bottom, I measured to 30 or 35 millimeters. This is where this will sit. We can adjust it obviously very easily down the road. If we need to raise or lower it, it sits in the old holster. And then obviously the dust shield fits in there just like it did before. What I'm doing now is I'm actually adding some compression with this pull jack right here to allow me to get the bolts back in right here. This is a keyed bolt. That's part of what will be adjusted when they do the alignment. I'm going to be tightening this bolt back up right here, which went to the body. And then I'm putting this bolt back in right here. And then I will also tighten this bolt up as well. Basically what I'm doing is giving the car a little bit of what it would feel like if it was resting on its own weight. The benefit of that is you never want to tighten all these bushings up when the car is sagging, because once the car is at ride height or when the weight is back on the suspension, you can actually tear or rip or tweak your bushings inside the joints. So it's very rare that the car is obviously held up by, it's a lift where there's no weight on the vehicle. So that's fine. But what you don't want to do is tighten it when there's no weight on the vehicle, and then 99% of its life, it's sitting on its own weight with these bushings that are now twisted or torqued or possibly damaged because of that. So we never do that. What I'm doing now is just getting this stuff buttoned up so it's lightly loosened, and then I will take the weight off, and then I will go over to the passenger side, or excuse me, the driver's side of the car, and finish that up. Other than that, she's looking pretty good. Just took a while to kind of figure out how to get the spring out, which you saw in the previous video. And I think releasing these body bolts and letting the suspension drop a little more was very, very helpful. I also did the upper shock. It just goes right back in. You use the factory mount up here with the factory dust shield. And then I did all that. So that's the new shock that's going in there. So that'll be put in here soon. And then we'll tighten that bolt up as mentioned, reconnect the sway bar link, and we will be good to go, and we can move on to the other side. So more to come. All right, there we have it. These are all connected and tight. It's set at 205 millimeters as mentioned. I got this arm that went to the bottom of the shock after I put the strut assembly in to connect down to here to the lower control arm. Connected up the sway bar, put the caliper back on. This car actually has upgraded S5 discs. They're a little bigger than the S or the A4 discs, and this metal bracket moves the caliper out further. It's the same caliper that comes with the factory, but it moves the caliper out and then allows you to utilize the larger rotor. So it just fills up the wheel a little better. I think it looks nicer. The previous owner had done that, and I think it's a nice upgrade. And then also all of this is all tight in here. I just got to connect the brake lines back up to their little holders, but I'm going to lower the car down to do that. All right, so everything is done. I got everything buttoned up. I'll show some pictures and stuff while I show you the video later. But I told you before, I kind of set it to the lower end of the threshold with regards to the span of millimeters that they allowed you to measure from top height to lowest height. We're going to put the wheels on. I already have the two on the other side. We're going to put these wheels on and lower it down and just see where it sits. Obviously, these things, when they sit down, they need to sit a little longer. Sometimes even a drive will help. But I just want to get an idea for how low it is. If I way off, does it look almost perfect and, you know, I can tweak at the height that it's at? Or am I going to have to make some major adjustments, which I'll have to put it right back on the lift for? So throw the wheels on and we'll see how she looks. Well, she's definitely lower, a lot lower. The front actually, I think, looks fairly good. The back, to me, seems like it's a little low, and I do not like that, especially when the car literally just got sat down and it hasn't even had time to, you know, kind of level out yet. That is too low for me. I don't think I want it that low, so I will be adjusting that one. The fronts, however, I think actually look pretty good. I took a measurement from the wheel well to the center of the wheel before, and I could do that again. I think it was like, let's see where I wrote down at, but yeah, 14.25. Yeah, 13.5. Yeah, this is definitely way low in the back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jack the car back up. The lift is still in the same position. That's why I wanted to do that. Just, I don't want to keep swinging the arms in and out and going for a drive. What I'm probably going to do is jack the car up right now and actually adjust the rear just so it raises it a little bit. And then we'll see what happens to the rest of the car. After that, I might leave it and see how I think the ride height looks and feels. I just think that's a little low back there. I like that though. And I feel like that'll sit down a little more too once it has time to settle. Yeah, see, I feel like that moved a little bit. So, gosh, the back looks so sweet though, lowered like that. It's just too low. I'm gonna raise the back a little bit and then we will see what happens. Yeah, it still seems a little low, but it's definitely higher. You can kind of see the top of the wheel. I don't want to go too much higher on that because I'm literally at the end of that spring perch and it just makes me, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's there for a reason, but I just don't want the car to be too low. You know what I mean? So I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna raise it up, I'm gonna do a little more adjustment, and then I think I'm gonna call it a day. All right, so here we are done. The reason why you're seeing this video a little later than I wanted to put it up on YouTube was because I had to wait for something. I called ACH Tuning, and they could not help me. I called H&R Springs themselves, the company, and they actually came in and really helped out tremendously. So if you have an Allroad, not an Avant or a wagon, but if you have an Allroad and you are planning on lowering your B8 or B8.5, you are definitely going to want to watch this video. The main reason is that the Allroad is much heavier, I mean hundreds of pounds heavier than the Avant or the wagon, so to speak. With that being said, they say the kit is for an Allroad, an Avant, a B8, and all that stuff, but they don't have any different spring rates for those cars. On this car, what I found out, and what you saw in this video, at the last part of the video with me talking, was I raised that collar all the way up. And actually, if you remember from the area where I was putting on the lubrication to the collar in the middle of the video, when that collar, when the threaded ring goes all the way up to the top of the collar, that is now flush with the top of the collar. So if I loosened it up more or spread it apart further, that threaded collar would start to come off of the top of that perch, which they say the working range is up to 55 millimeters between those two measurements. And I think I'm at like 58. What I found out is I talked a little bit about earlier in the video where, you know, this was like 16.25 and it went down to like 14.25. And then that was roughly the same height. It was 16.25 roughly. And it went down to 13.25. I mean, it literally dropped 3 inches. With me moving all of it, you know, the threaded collar all the way to the top, I got back to like 13.8 inches. So it's right under 14 inches. So even though, and with doing that, I had to lower the front just a couple spins to help match the back. Personally, I think the car is too low and there's no adjustability. The only adjustability I have is to put the car even lower, which I wouldn't want to do. Especially if you think about an Allroad, I have the factory wheels and tires. I probably will put snow tires on them. And then if I ever get up, you know, if I ever go up into the mountains or going to be in an area with snow, while it's on the lift and I'm changing the tires, it would be very easy for me to thread those back up and you know, raise the car a ½ inch or whatever, just so I felt comfortable. With that, I couldn't do that. And I'm at the top of the perch, which means the spring, even though it's, you know, compressing the same way, I'm raising the car, and now it's kind of like on this area that makes me feel kind of like that. So I wouldn't feel very comfortable, you know, taking a fast corner or being kind of aggressive in the twisties with the car. The good thing about the spring, and I will put the part number below you when you're watching or in the description of the video, the spring is 20 millimeters taller than this spring, but it's identical in its shape. The spring rate and the top and bottom are also, you know, both top and bottom of the spring are identical in terms of their size. So it'll fit right into the exact boot that goes in the top part of the spring in the rear. And then it'll also fit in the same collar that I'm threading all the way up to get the height that I need. So what I'm going to do is the springs are on order. They charged me $289 for 2 springs. I thought that was fair considering everything that's going on. I wish I could trade these in for those, but again, I didn't buy this kit. The kit came with the car. The previous owner had purchased the coilover kit and then just never put them on. So that's what we're doing, and I love the look of the car, and I sent him pictures, and he's like, man, it looks fantastic. But you know, ideally, we needed to find a better solution, and I'm glad I reached out to H&R and kind of told them what was happening. We went over curb weights and that sort of thing, and then he got with the engineers, and they said, we actually do have a spring for you, and this is what we can do. So with that being said, I'll probably put some photos up right now while I'm talking to you about what the car looks like right now, and trust me, I think it looks good. I'm not saying it doesn't, but I just want a little more height in the rear. And really, it's just me driving. If I had 4 people in the car, what would it be like back there? So I want a little more height in the rear. And then also, I want to be able to have that adjustability to raise and lower the car if needed. They think with the extra 20 millimeters of spring, I should be able to get another ½ to 3/4 of an inch height in the rear. But now what I can do is thread the collar down so it's right where I want it in the lowest setting that I'm comfortable with. And then I always have that adjustability to go up, and we have the solution that we need. So If you have an Audi A4 all-road B8 or B8.5, you definitely want to see this video. And if you order the coilover kit, see if they can trade out the rear springs with the part number that I'm going to provide to you. It is a 20 millimeter taller spring, exact same spring rate, exact same identical bottom and top to the spring. So it should be a really, really great solution. And maybe I'll do a video once everything is back together. I have the car looking like it's on a lift right now because I raised it up just to make sure that I tightened the sway bar. I thought maybe I forgot that, but everything looked good. I did get the car aligned, so after I put the springs back in, even though they're going to only be a half-inch higher, I may check alignment in the rear just to make sure. But the front, I will leave where it is, and then if I ever need to raise it, I can. So really thank you for watching the video and sticking with me through the whole thing. I know it was probably the longest video I've done, but there's just so much work to be done, and if I sat there and explained it all, I mean, it would be an hour and a half long, the video, and also extremely boring. So thanks again for watching, and we'll come up with another one soon. All right? Thanks.